Today I'm going to answer some questions about religious instruction in New Zealand state primary schools. So the first question is, are you for or against religion in New Zealand primary schools and why? Well, I think that all New Zealand primary schools should be welcoming of all students regardless of their belief. So we shouldn't have any kind of system which makes any particular faith disenfranchised. So we don't want, for example, Buddhists to feel like they don't belong, or Hindus, or Islam, or even Christianity. Although obviously Christianity is the majority religion in New Zealand. So the real question is, how do we create a school system which is inclusive of all children, and where all children can feel safe and welcome at school? And my position is that by having schools endorse any particular religion, that is actually working against freedom of religion, because that means that the other religions don't feel as if they are included. And obviously this includes atheists. I mean, if you're an atheist, you don't want to be indoctrinated with the religion of other people. So the basic premise of state schools should be that we don't actively try and indoctrinate children with any particular religion. And with 40% of New Zealand schools at the moment, that's exactly what happens. There's a religious indoctrination program, usually in the vast majority is a Christian one. Second question. Do you think parents are given enough notice and information on Bible study in the primary schools? Well, there's quite a wide variety of different practices. So some schools have an opt-in system where the pupils have to have a notice from their parent to physically opt them into the program. So that's probably the minority of cases. Usually there is no parental consent. So potentially there may be a notice in the school newsletter about it, but the parents don't necessarily have to provide any kind of notification to say that they actually agree to their children being involved in the programs. Sometimes no notification at all is provided. So basically the children are sent to religious instruction without the knowledge of their parents. And sometimes the notification is dishonest, such as being, they say that it's a religious instruction program. They say that it's a values program when it's really specifically a Bible study kind of program. So increasingly in New Zealand, people don't want sort of a religious instruction program or a religious indoctrination program in their schools. And the way that many Christian organisations have got around this is to frame it as a values program or teaching morals. Which of course means that they may be teaching morals, but it's from their own unique point of view. The main point, however, in regard to how religious instruction is conducted in schools, is that the law provides a way for religious indoctrination to occur in schools. So-called Nelson Clause means that schools can operate out of official school hours, but still include children that go to the school. Without their parents' permission, their express informed consent. This means that although some schools are good and they do ask for the parents' informed consent, other schools, or many schools, don't ask for explicit consent. At the very best, they provide some kind of notice, and even those notices are not necessarily informing the parents of the exact nature of that study. So, yeah, it's a bit of a problem that the law isn't really dealing with supporting true freedom of belief in New Zealand. Third question. What would your opinion if the law changed for religion to be compulsory in New Zealand primary schools? It depends on what you mean by religion. If we're talking about religious education, where there's a broad range of different religions taught about, where that teaching isn't specifically indoctrinational. In other words, you're not trying to indoctrinate the kids with that particular religion, but teaching them about the history of the religion and what the precepts of the religion are. Then I think that has some value, and there's broad agreement that kind of education at the appropriate level, probably in social studies school, possibly in secondary school rather than primary school, that probably has some value, because it teaches people about the different cultures and what their beliefs are. However, there's a massive difference between that kind of unbiased religious education and the religious instruction that occurs with 5 and 6 year olds in many New Zealand schools before they can even read and write. Okay, it's pointless trying to educate pupils around 5 or 6 about the nuances and the complexities of religion, which many adults can't really get to grips with at that kind of age. Essentially, at this age, it's essentially an indoctrination program, and we're adamantly opposed to teaching 5 and 6 year olds about a specific religion and teaching them that it's true. Okay, the fourth question is, do you yourself have a religious background? Does that background have an influence on your opinions today? Well, I was brought up as a Presbyterian. My mother was a Presbyterian, and we went to church. I went to Sunday school, and I participated in various Christian organisations. This was when I was sort of relatively young, probably 8 or 9. I've never been a theist, so I've never really believed in God. I went to Sunday school because my parents took me, so there was never any indication that I was religious, and all my life I've been interested in science and the process of reason and evidence to decide what's real and not. So that's where I am from a point of view of my history. I've also been involved in the martial arts. That had a pretty significant effect on my upbringing, because the principles of honour and of service, they've pretty much been core to my whole being, my life philosophy, you might say. And I've also been influenced by people like Carl Sagan and Richard Feynman, who have also added to that sense of scientific integrity, which I think is critical to the scientific process. Okay, final question. What actions do you know of that have been in support or opposing for religion in schools? Well, in 2012, I was involved in establishing the Secular Education Network. It began on a Facebook page called Keep Religion Out of Schools, and it was essentially a place or a venue where parents who were dealing with this issue could come and discuss their problems. So the reality is that schools, they tend to frame parents who are complaining as isolated, and the lone ones complaining, and they're the only ones. If a parent complains, they say, well, you're the only ones complaining at the school. The reality is that that's very rarely the case, that many parents can complain, but they're not told of each other, and they're made to feel as if they're isolated. So the initial purpose of the Secular Education Network was to allow these parents to come together and learn from each other, and provide mutual support for each other. So that was the original purpose of the organisation, or the Facebook page. But we've since obviously taken some more real world action. We've conducted protests and leaflet drops in various areas. We've helped support parents by actually taking action to educate the public about what the situation is. We've also more recently been taking legal action. We've been taking the education department to court, or the government to court basically, over the violation of human rights in terms of that religious instruction is when it's done without the parental consent. So we actually had 2 cases, and one of them is still ongoing. So the first case wasn't particularly successful for technical reasons. Our other case is currently in progress. The objective really is to identify religious instruction as incompatible with the Human Bill of Rights. Incompatible with the New Zealand Bill of Rights and the Human Rights Act, because it does not. The legislation in the Education Act isn't compatible with human rights in terms of freedom of belief.